Hello creeps! Andy here, and today I have my, what month is it? What year is it? August wrap up for you guys. Anyways, these are the books that I have read in August. I am currently reading one now, but I don't think that I'll be able to finish it before the end of the month, especially because I'm going to be kind of busy the next few days. So this will go out the last day of the month. Are you ready? I feel like I need a reading wrap-up song. Yeah, let's begin. A lot of these I have made videos on, or I have been in videos. Like a lot of my reading this month was for videos, so you'll see a lot of things that I've already read in here, but I'll try not to go into too much detail of the ones that I have read for other videos. Oh, that's what I was gonna say. Let me know how the sound sounds. I've gotten a few comments about the quality of the audio. So I have a microphone in my camera, but I don't know how this is gonna go. So you'll have to let me know if it sounds better or if it sounds worse. Just give me the deets down below. This is what I read this month and a few other things, but these are mainly the books that I read. The first one that I read was Mayfly by CJ Leede. I was very excited to read this. I saw the cover before the book came out, and I just thought this is going to be an interesting book, and I was not disappointed. This was a blast. It's about a girl named Mayfly. She lives with her grandmother, and she has a darkness inside of her, and when she chooses to embrace Patrick Bateman and feed into the darkness, madness ensues. It's, you know, a lot of murder and torture and fun stuff like that. I really enjoyed this one. I think her writing style is pretty unique, but it's also kind of like in the middle of Bret Easton Ellis and Chuck Palahniuk's way of writing. You know how they have like very distinct way of writing. So I feel like she has definitely her own distinct way of writing, but it's somewhere in the middle. So I feel like if you like those authors, that you'll really like her. Yeah, this blew me away. I can't believe this was her first book, and I'm really excited to see what else she has to write in the future. Next up, I read Rage by Stephen King, or rather Richard Bachman. This is in the Bachman books. It has been removed as of, I actually don't know when this book fell out of print, but if you buy this new, Rage will not be in it. And if you buy the Bachman books, sometimes they're a little bit more expensive. I picked this guy up for like 30 or 40 bucks, because I wanted to read Rage in it and let you know what it's about. It's about a man who he kills his teacher and he holds the classroom hostage. It's a very unique perspective and not at all what I thought was going to happen in the story. The class kind of sympathizes with him in a lot of ways, and he's kind of the hero of the story. I don't know, it's definitely a lot different than I thought it was gonna be, but anyways, that's Rage, one of the novellas by Richard Bachman. I have a whole video on that. I'll leave all the videos linked down below of the books that I read this month in case you didn't watch them and want a little bit more information on each of the books. The next one that I read was the Castle of, oh man, I always pronounce this one wrong. I call it Otranto, but it's Otranto? I think it's the Castle of Otranto. This is by Horace Walpole, and this is considered the first horror book ever written. It's kind of where the Gothic horror begins. He was very obsessed with Gothic architecture and the Goth people, which there's an introduction about who the Goth people are and things like that. It's an interesting book, definitely I think worth the read if you're interested to see where the horror genre began, but also a little weird. It's about a castle where this family lives and a giant helmet falls out of the sky and kills their son, who is supposed to be getting married. And then the dad, instead of, you know, mourning his son, just decides that he wants to marry the girl that he was going to marry his son off to instead, so that she can have his children, so that he can have another son. It's a weird story. It's a wild ride, but again, interesting to see kind of where the horror genre began. Oh, I forgot, after Rage, I read The Little Mermaid as well. I don't know why, but I really like reading like these Disney stories where they actually began, because they're so much darker. My favorite so far has been Cinderella for sure, but I've read Cinderella, I've read The Little Mermaid, and I also did a whole video on James and the Giant Peach, because the books I feel like could be interpreted in a little bit darker of a way that maybe isn't just for kids. But these fairy tales that Disney decided to make into movies for children. It just blows my mind. There's some weird stuff that goes on in there. The Little Mermaid and the prince do not end up together at the end, and she actually dies. Spoiler alert. So yeah, not at all what I was expecting from that one, but not as bad as the Cinderella story. That one still takes the cake thus far on the fairy tales that I've read. I really enjoyed that one. Next one that I read was Dead Inside by Chandler Morrison. I loved this book. Now, this is not me recommending this to you or the next three to you just because I like them. These are really, really extreme horror books. They deal with really, really gross, dark things. So do your research before you even think about picking these up if you are not versed in the extreme horror subgenre of horror, because there's some gross stuff in here. It's about a man that's into necrophilia, and he meets a girl who has an horrifically unusual appetite. She eats, I'll just say she eats people, even though that's not really the whole story. Anyways, it's really, really gross and dark, but I gotta tell you, I really loved how it was written. It was really beautifully written. I really enjoy the juxtaposition with really disgusting, gruesome things and really beautiful ways of writing. And that's why Clive Barker is one of my favorite writers, because he does that so well. He has such a poetic way of writing about really gross, horrific things. And I mean, that's why I love Pet Sematary, because I think it's one of Stephen King's more poetically written books. And so, yeah, I really like that juxtaposition of awful things being written in beautiful ways. And I think this book just really encompasses that. Again, not recommending it. Please do your research before you read that. Same with this guy right here. This is Womb by Duncan Ralston. This is about a man who gets a sex worker to meet him in a hotel room and then tells her horrific stories that happen in that hotel room. And I can't even explain how wild the ending of this book is. I really enjoyed this one as well. The ending really was what sold it to me. At first I was like, oh, this is pretty mild, and then I got to the end and I'm like, oh, okay, this is something you've never read before, I can promise you that. The next one that I read was Cows by Matthew Stokoe. That one is about cows that talk and a slaughterhouse and a man that works at the slaughterhouse, and he talks to the cows that escaped the slaughterhouse, and they want vengeance on the man that's been killing the cows for, you know, years. He also has a very horrible relationship with his mother, and he's just kind of trying to find his way in the world. But this book is horrific. Like, it's 200 pages of just really, really hard to read stuff. So also keep that in mind. But yeah, I did also like that one. The next one that I read, after reading all those extreme horrors, I was like, I just need a break. I just need to read some light thrillers. And so I decided to pick up Lucy Foley's The Paris Apartment. This one was interesting. It's about a girl. She goes to stay in her brother's apartment in Paris, and it's like this fancy building. And when she arrives, he's missing. He's not there. And so she's trying to figure out what happened to them. She meets different people. Sorry, my cat's playing with a rolled up piece of paper. She meets the people in the building, and they all seem to know more than they're letting on. And she's just trying to figure out what happened to her brother. And Lucy Foley's stories are really interesting because you think you know where they're going, and then you get to the end and you're like, oh, okay, I didn't see that coming. The thing with this one was I'm reading it and I'm like, how come I'm not as into this as I feel like I should be? Because a lot of you said you liked this one even more than the guest list, and I loved the guest list. And I'm reading this and I'm like, why do I feel like I just read this book? And then it dawned on me, is I just read this one, Lock Every Door by Riley Sager, the month before, and these have a lot of similarities. It's about a girl who goes and stays in an apartment that she doesn't fit into. The residents feel like they're keeping secrets from her. Somebody goes missing and they try to solve a crime. Honestly, pretty identical, very different in what ends up happening, but a lot of those same like tropes are there. And so I think because I read this one very recently, this one felt like I had just read this book. You know what I mean? Even though I hadn't. And they are different in their own ways, and they each have their own things. So I feel like I kind of wish that I hadn't read this one just after that one. I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more. There's a lot of stuff that I did enjoy in this book, and I do like her writing style. I did think it was interesting, but because I just read this one after that one. I think I preferred The Guest List. Isn't that so interesting how a book that you read a month prior can interfere with a book that you're reading now? I don't know. Literature is so wild, but I'm pretty sure that most people would enjoy this one. It was just a light little thriller, nothing crazy happening, a fun little adventure to go on with the main girl to try to figure out what happened. The last one that I read was this guy, The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager, and can I tell you, this was one of, if not the best thriller I've ever read. Yeah, hands down, one of the best thrillers I've ever read. I get so disappointed with thrillers. They're either boring or the ending's kind of a letdown, or I don't know, thrillers just let me down. I feel like they're so predictable 90% of the time, and this book was so good. It's about a girl who goes to a summer camp as a young girl. Her 3 cabin mates disappear. No one can find them. No one knows what happened to them. Like 15 years later, she's a famous painter who paints the girls under a landscape of like forest, like they're lost in the forest again. And she's become pretty famous for her writing, or sorry, she becomes pretty famous for her painting style. And she's asked back to the camp because it's about to reopen again. She's nervous to go, but she also thinks maybe she can find some clues of what happened there. And she goes back to the camp and starts to kind of put the pieces together of what happened to those missing girls 15 years ago. And it seems like a story maybe you've read before, but honestly, this book blew me away. I cannot even tell you how much I loved this book. It was so good. I love, at least the 2 books that I've read, Riley Sager's main female characters. I think he does such a good job of understanding and writing female characters, especially in a book like this where you have a young female character and then also her as an adult as well. I think he did such a good job talking about like the awkward teen phases as a girl, looking up to like the older, cooler girls, feeling kind of like you don't fit in. I really like his female characters, at least in the books that I've read so far, and I've really connected with them in a lot of ways, which I found really interesting. And because of that, immediately after this one, I picked up another Riley Sager because I was just so impressed. Don't get me wrong, I liked Lock Every Door. Like, I really enjoyed it when I read it, and then I read this one and I'm like, oh, this is superior. This is on a whole nother level. This is fantastic. So yeah, I highly recommend if you guys are looking for a thriller book, especially, you know, it's the end of summer, you got your camp setting in here and some mystery and missing girls, and I don't know, I just feel like there's a lot in this book. I was not bored for 1 second. I could not put this down. I stayed up till 5 a.m. reading this because I had to finish it. I loved this book so much. So let me know how you guys feel about those. Yeah, so those are the books that I read this month. I know it looks like a lot of books, but a lot of these were novellas or really short novels, and I feel like this month I actually read less page-wise and time-wise than I have in months prior. So I know it looks like a lot, but it actually really wasn't. But anyway, please feel free to leave a comment down below. Let me know what you guys read. Please let me know how the audio feels. If it's not good, then I can change it up again. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon with another horror video. Bye guys.